The existence of God, and the devil for that matter, has never really been questioned by the world until this day and time, because of the condition the world is in today, such as plagues, diseases, wars and natural disasters. You have people wondering where is God and why hasn't he put an end to all this pain and suffering? Because your leaders can't answer simple question like this. They'll just say have patience, God is the all-knowing. He knows what you are going through. He is going to deliver those who do good, not those who do bad. This is saying either one of two things about God. That is, he really doesn't know what you're going through and is moving very slow in fulfilling his promises, or everyone who is suffering must be a bad person. What people need to do is ask their leaders, teachers, preachers, sheikhs and imams, what has God done on the planet that renders him God, having godly qualities? Because once you've gone through the Bible, you yourself can see the flaws in God's character. And ask your preachers, what has the devil done that makes him such a devil? This scroll entitled Does God and the Devil Exist? Brings out questions for you to think about. What size is God? Where was God before the creation of the universe? Not only does this scroll question the existence of God, but also the existence of the devil. Did the devil tell Eve the truth in the garden? Was the devil a man, and if so, who is he now? Where is he now? Where was he when Adam and Eve were created? Is the devil only one person, and if not, can anyone be the devil? This devil, as you call him, just seemed to have popped up out of nowhere, like God did. Does this mean the devil is just as powerful as God, since he wasn't created from the ground? And because your leaders can't answer questions such as where did the devil come from, if he wasn't created with Adam and Eve on earth? And who, group or species of beings is he a part of? They will give you some allegorical and mythological stories which are not backed up by biblical, historical, archaeological and scientific facts. These questions are important for those who are looking for the facts of the scriptures and where man's interpretation and poor translation have stepped in and misguided people. I will make the answers to these questions all clear in this scroll, and the answers to the many other questions that you ask and never receive answers to, as I've done in the many other books I've published. According to your Bible and Quran, God does exist. The God of your scriptures is a plural Elohim, as found in Genesis 1:1, where it says, and I quote, "In the beginning God created." The word used for God in this quote is Elohim, which translates as these beings. In the Aramaic, Hebrew, language, any word that has yod and meme at the end of it is then plural. Do not believe the lie that the word Elohim, which is used for God in Genesis 1:1, is used as a plural out of respect. In Quran 43:45 and many other places throughout the holy book of the Mohammedans, you will find the word Al-Haadi in Arabic, which again is a plural form of the name Allah. In Quran 43:45 it states, and I quote, "Did we appoint any deities other than Allah, most gracious, to be worshipped?" However, Mohammedans and so-called Islamic scholars will lead you to believe in the English translation and convince you that it is right and exact. They will also try to convince you that this word Allahumma in Quran 39:46 is a singular, when it is written right there in the Arabic Allahumma, which is a plural. In the Greek language the word for God is theos, which translates again as God, but is also equivalent to gods, where the Greek word being used for gods is also theos, which can be seen in Acts 14:11, where it says, and I quote, "The gods, theos, are come down to us in the likeness of man." The gods of the Bible and Quran came into existence when man was created, because gods wouldn't have been considered gods until there was something less than them, meaning man and God need each other to exist, because in order for something to exist to you, you must acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge God, then God doesn't exist to you. The Bible and the Quran's concept of God was created in the hearts and minds of their authors. When these authors became authentic, their documents became authentic. Within the pages of their documents called scriptures, God and the devil were born. How does God's spirit move across the face of the waters, as it states in Genesis 1:2? First, let's assume that a spirit, which the Jews, of course, call ruach in Hebrew and the Muslims call ruh in Arabic, meaning spirit, is moving upon the surface of the water according to Genesis 1:2. Whose spirit is moving upon the surface of the water? God. If God's spirit was moving upon the surface of the waters, then what becomes larger? The water or God? If God's spirit is moving upon the surface of the water, then the planet Earth is bigger than God, and God's spirit floats on the fa'nim, as the Hebrew says, on the surface of the waters. Genesis 1:2, because the planet Earth had become empty and desolate, and no sun's light shine through the dust clouds onto the surface of Tiamat's waters, and the wind of the Elohim, Nibiru, blew and moved the black dust clouds. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. This gives us another interpretation of God and his size and greatness. Now, why weren't you able to see this yourself without it being pointed out to you? That's the question. Well, it's easy to blame it on the spell of ignorance. Blaming the spell is like saying, the devil did it or the devil made me do it. But I'm talking about you, per se. Why haven't you read and comprehended this point and the many others that are there right in front of you in the Bible or the Quran? Don't you read for comprehension? So why weren't you able to comprehend what took place in Genesis 1:2? When you say the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, that means that God must be kind of small in size in comparison to the waters. This is what I mean when I say what size is God? Because if God is a spirit as it says in John 4:24 and I quote, God is a spirit. By saying a spirit you are singling him out as a part of something or one of something that exists. If he is a spirit or the Spirit, and he moves upon the face of the waters as Genesis 1:2 so clearly puts it, to move upon the waters, you have to be smaller than the waters. So if God moved upon the waters, then the waters are bigger than God. Now, we know that only 30% of the planet Earth is not covered underwater, and that 70% of this planet Earth is water. Another 36% is mountain and rock, and another 30% is agricultural land, places where people don't live. That leaves only 1% on the surface of the planet Earth for humans to live on. So when you break it down, human beings are living on about 1% of the planet Earth. Human beings assume that they are living on a large portion of the planet Earth, until you take the planet Earth and divide it up, and see that you don't live in water, so you are not on that part of it. You are not living on the rocks and high mountains, so you are not in that part of it, and you don't live in the deserts, so you are not in that part of it. So when you start isolating where human beings live, you come down to the fact that human beings are on a very small part of the planet Earth, which means that the human population of the Earth is very small in relation to the size or its circumference, 24,859 miles, and its diameter, 7,926 miles. Now let's take another look at God in the book of Genesis. One thing about God, is that in Genesis chapter 1, as I already explained to you, God's Spirit is moving upon the surface of the waters, and this water is a part of the planet Earth, also called Tiamat or Chi before the separation, and then called Eridu, which is ancient Sumerian meaning home away from home, when the angels also known as Elohim or Anunnaki who were your creators, came down to the planet Earth and set up cities. The earth was without form and void. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. It had to be shaped, and formed but by what sign, according to the Big Bang, the birth or creation of the sun? So, therefore there was no heaven. It was sky, Genesis 1:2. It was toho formless, emptiness, and boho void, waste, and just what is the deep tehom sea, abyss. Whenever someone in a Christian church, or a Muslim mosque, refers to heaven, and God coming out of the heavens, they are merely saying, he is a space being. And the devil is a sea creature who came on land. Because, if you say, where are the heavens? They will say, up there, and you would say, up there in space, outer space? So then, Allah is a space being, or Jehovah is a space being, or Yahweh is a space being, or Theos is a space being. They don't want to hear that. Reality would say that if you're standing on Earth, and he's out there, then he's in outer space, he's outside of the Earth's atmosphere. Then Genesis 1:2 says he was inside of the Earth's atmosphere floating around, above the surface of Tehom the water, sea. And he did it to the point where he was able to make a distinction between day and what they are calling night, Genesis 1:5. If anyone has flown in an airplane, you will know that you can fly, from broad daylight, and see darkness in front of you, and in a couple of minutes penetrate and be in the night time. You can be on a Boeing 747 on your way from here to London, and you can pass through that time zone. You'll be in light, and you will skip the night of that time zone. Then you would say, well, look, because you'll actually look back, and see the day behind you, from the night. Or look forward and see the night, in front of you from the day. The only way you could see this is because you were in some craft that moved upon the surface of the water or in the air above the earth but not outside of the earth's atmosphere. So, if God was able to see the evening and the morning change as it says in Genesis 1:8, God was in some craft, also that craft flew from day into night. He landed on the water, because it says in Genesis 1:2 the Spirit of God moved, which in Aramaic, Hebrew, is ra kaf meaning hover, move. Then it says upon the fa-neem face, surface. God was flying around the planet, and passing through different time zones. Now if you look at the Bible, it says that he saw that light was good Toby, and he was in darkness, and he penetrated light, and saw that the light was good Toby. Genesis 1:2-4, because the planet Earth had become empty and desolate, and no sun's light shined through the dust clouds onto the surface of Tiamat's waters, and the wind of the Elohim, Nibiru, blew and moved the black dust clouds. And these beings said, let exist light, and light existed. And the Elohim Anunnaki saw how agreeable the condition will be with light again, so they separated the light from the darkness. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Then what does 2 Corinthians 6:14 say, and I quote, For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And before God or Allah created the light, you say Son, there was darkness. In Quran 6:1 it says, and I quote, Praise be to Allah, who created the heavens and the earth, and made the darkness and the light. And in John 1:5 it says, and I quote, And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. If you turn to Genesis 1:26 you'll see where it says God said to let us, and I quote, God said, Let us make man in our image, and after our likeness. Now the question is, who is the us that God is talking about in Genesis 1:26? When you see the word he and us in the Bible, it is referring to God as an Elohim. The word Elohim is translated in Aramaic, Hebrew, means these beings, and the word Elohim is plural, as I have already explained to you in the beginning of this scroll. Elohim are angels of El or messengers of El. They are a host of beings that do the works of El, who is also known as Anu, and which means above or heavenly one. Thus making God a part of a group of gods. The word Elohim found in Genesis is in the plural form. These Elohim spoken of in Genesis 1:26 were a race of supreme beings called Anunnaki, whose name is Dinir in the cuneiform language, which was given to the Sumer people. These were the plural gods spoken of in the book of Genesis. So when they say Elohim, it is not referring to one being, as the English Bible falsely mistranslates it to be God. So the Anunnaki were the beings that were spoken of in Genesis. These were the gods that replenished heaven and earth. These were the beings that were traveling upon the face of the waters. The devil of the Bible came into existence, or was introduced for the first time, in Genesis 3:1, where he is called the serpent, and I quote, Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. The Hebrew word for serpent is nakash, which means divination or the whisperer, and kanas in the Quran of the Muslims, chapter 114. It says, according to Quran 7:22, and Genesis 3:13, that he was there, in order to beguile or trick Adam and Eve. He was therefore before them. Quran 7:22, so they proceeded with their deception. So when they tasted of the tree, the opium from the tree of agreeable and disagreeable underneath where the scroll of all was, it manifested to both of them their nakedness, and they began to sow upon themselves leaves, from the enclosed garden of delight, and their Rab, who is master, Kalkal/Uriel, called upon both of them. Did I not forbid both of you, of that tree? And I say to both of you, surely, Al-Shaitan, the reptilian, is to both of you, a clear enemy? Right translation in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Genesis 3:13, Yahuwah of the Elohim Kalkal, Rudwan, Uriel, said to Eve, Nekeba, what is this that you have done? Eve, Nekeba, answered and said, Nakash, Halil, the son of Shakar and Milita deceived me into consuming it. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. So this devil or Iblis or Shaitan or Satan was already there, or as the Quran says, he says, I was created before them of fire, free of smoke or smokeless fire, Quran 55:15, 7:11. You need things to start a fire, and oxygen is one of the main elements needed for a fire to burn. And what is fire? A fire is rapid, but continuous chemical reaction accompanied by the sending out of light and heat. Most commonly it results from a rapid chemical change in which there is a freeing of heat combined with oxygen by some combustible or burnable material. Flame and heat also may result from a reaction involving an element other than oxygen. In other words, it is the result of a rapid union of oxygen and other substances. Fire creates and makes toxins. Most people die from the toxins and chemicals that fire give off. Then there are gas fires, fuel fires, electric fires, spontaneous combustion fires, hell's fire, which according to the religious sector, is symbolic of the devil. So my questions to the Mohammedans are, which of these fires was the devil or Iblis created from? What things existed before Allah created the heavens and the earth? What things started the fire to create the devil or Iblis? Quran 55:15. These are just a few of the many questions that Muslims cannot answer. In the Quran 15:27 refers to Iblis as Narun al-Samyun, which means illuminated poison. What is meant by Iblis being created of fire means, it's talking about the anger. The hot breath you give off. The Kirlian form of fire called your aura. When you become angry, your personality changes from positive to negative, thus making your light, aura or color change. This is the same thing that happened to Iblis when Allah asked him to bow down to Adam and he refused in Quran 2:34, and I quote, Bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. Not so Iblis, he refused and was haughty. Iblis was called haughty as well, which translates in Arabic as astakbira, which means big-chested, boastful and full of pride, pouting out of anger. When it says he is created from smokeless fire, it is referring to his nature. The devil can be anybody who loses touch with reality and goes ego-tripping and pouts out of smokeless fire, which is what Iblis did when he was asked to bow down to Adam. So when the word fire is used when referring to Iblis being created from fire is talking about his aura or his Kirlian form. Quran 55:15 confirms this because it says, and I quote, "And he created jinns from fire free of smoke or smokeless fire." There is no such thing as a fire free of smoke because no matter what kind of fire is burning, there is always smoke. So it is obvious that Quran 55:15 was not talking about your normal everyday fire. Nakash was created before them, because obviously they speak of the creation of Adam and Eve, Genesis 1:27. But where do they speak of the creation of the devil? The Bible refers to the devil as a serpent, Genesis 3:1. The devil wasn't from Adam and Eve's seed because it is stated in Genesis 3:15, and I quote, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed." This same story can be found in Quran 2:36. When God was talking to the serpent, he made a clear distinction between the serpent's, seed and woman's seed. Thus, the serpent didn't come out of Adam and Eve's seed. What is a serpent? It is a reptile, and reptiles dwell in water and some on land, Revelation 13:1. So the devil must have been a reptile. We know that Shaitan was in the waters before the earth was reformed because in Genesis 1:2 it says that darkness was upon the face of the deep, and we saw the deep was the water. So he was in the waters. We saw he was called a creature. How do we know he was in the waters? Well, ask yourself, is he mentioned in the Bible or the Quran when Adam and Eve were created? No, but we do see that he just appears in the garden. So where did he come from? Well, he must have come from the waters, you follow? And then when the earth was reformed, he went upon the earth. Now, there it was void and darkness upon the earth, and only water. Then where did this Satan, who pops up in Genesis chapter 3, live before the dry land appeared? Thus, you have the snake story. The Quran of the Muslims says that the devil was created before Adam and Eve in Quran 7:11-12, where he says himself, "I am better than he, thou didst create me from fire, and him from clay." Iblis literally asked Allah, "Why should I bow down to Adam who is created of clay and I was created before him of fire?" The word used for bow in Quran 7:11 and 12 is sajda, which means to prostrate. And what do you do when you prostrate? You put your face to the ground. If the devil is in heaven, then the devil couldn't bow. In order for Iblis to bow to Adam, he had to be standing on solid ground, which means they must have been standing on some type of firm foundation such as the earth or heaven has floors. The devil was being asked to prostrate to man who was made of clay, as the Quran 23:12 puts it, is a sin. Then the law still existed not to bow or worship anyone other than Allah, which left the devil between a rock and a hard place. They understood back then, in the ancient tablets, that this Satan was some type of reptilian who lived in the water before the dry land reappeared, as Genesis 1:2 makes it seem. Then when the dry land appears, this reptilian obviously came onto land to influence these new created or procreated beings, Zakar, Adam, and Nekeba, Eve. And if the devil was created before Adam, this would mean the devil would have had to have been created within the 6 days of creation before Adam and Eve, because that's when all the minerals were created. That means that he came with the creation of the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1:9-10, "And the Elohim Anunnaki said amongst each other, the waters beneath the skies are to be brought together as one mass as oceans, rivers, streams and lakes, and let the dry land be seen. And this happened. And the Elohim Anunnaki called out that the planet earth will be called dry ground, the land mass, Chi. And the waters that were gathered together they called the seas, Tiamat, and the Elohim Anunnaki saw that things this way were agreeable." Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. So now we have another approach of looking at Shaitan, Satan, or the devil, or the serpent, as a reptile who religious scholars describe as moving on his belly like a snake, Genesis 3:14. Scholars will draw all of these conclusions about the devil being a snake, however, they fail to realize he had to have dwelled in water. He was a Numus, as the tribe of Dogons in Mali, Africa, call the beings that came from the star Sirius the dog star, Alpha in the Canis Major constellation, who lived in water at night and came on land to teach and mix with them. There is an African tribe who speak and teach this today. This tribe is known as the Dogons, and their high priest is called a Hogan. They migrated from Nubia and now live in Mali, West Africa, in the cliffs of Badiagra. The knowledge that the Dogons speak about today is information that was handed down to them from their descendants. The Dogons have knowledge about the universe, star formations and constellations that scientists didn't know about and still say it was impossible for the Dogons to know about because they do not have any telescopes or any of the advanced technology and equipment that astronomers use today. These beings who came to them were a species of reptilians called the Maldakians, the ones who lived under the Bermuda Triangle. The Dogons are in Mali today and they are the descendants of the Numus. And the word Numus comes from the Greek word for law, which is also spelled nomos, meaning law, as found in Matthew 5:17, and is the law of Moses, which is the Torah. the Hebrew word meaning law, direction, instruction. The Dagons were named after the disagreeable Anunnaki, named Dagon meaning a fish, as found in Judges 16:23, 1 Samuel 5:2-5:7 and 1 Chronicles 10:10, which is from the Hebrew root word dog meaning fish. According to online Bible Strong's Concordance, Dagon is the Philistine deity of fertility, represented with the face and hands of a man and the tail of a fish, which proves that these reptilians were from the water, as I mentioned earlier. The Nubians' name for reptilian is Dogr, and the plural of it is Dogri, and the name for the Greys was angels or children of the Nile, which is another group of extraterrestrials. The 56th name of one of the 200 fallen angels is Dagon. The elite of the reptilians are called the Dragos. They can take on human form and have bred children that reside with you, the children of the Elohim. When they show movies like Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars and Star Trek, etc., they are telling you about the history of this planet. They are telling you the real stories in movies every day. In Star Trek, the Klingons are reptilians. They are telling you who they are. These malevolent, disagreeable, vicious beings, the reptilians, are your shaitan of the Quran, Quran 2:14, 594, also called Khanas, Quran 114-4. That's your Hasatan of the Torah, Numbers 22:22, and Nikas of Genesis 3:1. That is your Satanas of the Bible, Revelation 22. The Greeks make it clear because they call the reptilians Drakon, dragon, which the Orientals picked up, and call them dragons. Psalm 91:13 has the dragon as Tan-Nain meaning sea monster, serpent. Isaiah 27:1 called him Leviathan meaning sea monster, serpent, and in the same quote you get Nakash meaning serpent, snake, whisperer. The ancient Orientals worshipped the dragon at one time, meaning they worshipped the sea creature or the reptilians who you call Satan. That's how the devil fits there, in the waters in Genesis 1:20-22, before your Genesis 1:2 story starts, where it says, and I quote, "And the earth was without form, and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." The earth is without form and void, but there were waters. If he was there before Adam, then he must have lived beneath the waters, Genesis 1:20. Your scholars pick the story up at Genesis chapter 7, and jump right to Genesis 3:1, they don't even start to explain where Satan came from. Nobody even thinks about asking the reverend or the imam or the rabbi, where did Iblis, the rebellious devil, come from? The Quran says, Uwa min al-Kafirin, meaning he is from the Kafirin. Right in the Quran 2:34 they say Kafirin in Arabic. It's a plural, or a group of beings, that is what you are calling disagreeable, coverers of the truth, or in their simple translation, disbelievers. Quran 2:34, and when we, the Etherians, said for the messengers, those Elohim Anunnaki, to prostrate for Zakar, Adam. They all prostrated except the rebellious one, Iblis. He refused to prostrate, and he was big-chested with pride, and he was of al-Kafirin, those who concealed what they knew to be the truth. Right translation in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. In order for Shaitan in the Quran 2:34 to be called a kafir, what did he disbelieve in? Quran 2:34 clearly says, he is from amongst the kafirin. What were they covering up? What were they disbelieving in? This Shaitan is a disbeliever, and he disbelieved before the Torah was written. It wasn't the Torah that he was against. He disbelieved before the New Testament was written. He disbelieved before the Quran or the Suhuf or any other sacred scriptures were written. This raises the question, who or what did he disbelieve in? There must have been laws, rules and regulations in order for Iblis to question authority. Now we know that he was talking because it is mentioned in Genesis 3:1 when he talked to Eve in the garden and said, Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Now Eve was minding her own business walking in the garden, and then all of a sudden a serpent starts talking, or as the Quran says, whisper to her. And the Muslims use the same story, Quran 7:20. If you were to see a serpent or a snake wrapped around a tree talking to you, you wouldn't stand there and have a conversation with it. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't have a conversation with anything that looked outside of what you look like. Not even Eve's curiosity would have allowed her to stay there and talk to or listen to the whispers of some talking snake. Therefore, he must have looked like a man. Here we see that one thing, this snake man was a disbeliever in Adam and Eve's gods, the Elohim, the one named Kalkal whose god was Anu, the El. This one Nakash or Iblis the jinn, the Kafir also called Halal, or Samael, Kanas and Shaitan or Satan, the Dracos, did not accept these Elohim's philosophy by what Kalkal was telling Eve about the tree in the garden. So he crept into the garden to bring these two new creations over to his side or group of disbelievers. He told Eve that the Elohim Kalkal, her god, was lying to her about the fruit of the tree because he did not want them to be as knowledgeable as he was knowing good and evil, Genesis 3:5. So the serpent told her, ye shall not surely die, Genesis 3:4. Calcal knew that Adam and Eve would not die because anything in physical body is destined to die, meaning you will age and eventually die. Genesis 3:3 is not talking about that kind of death. Genesis 3:3 is speaking of an immediate, on the spot, drop-dead kind of death which the Elohim knew would not happen to Adam and Eve if they ate from the tree. The Elohim Calcal told them this in order for them to have obedience. This is just like when a mother tells her child, don't smoke reefer or you will become a drug addict and die. But the drug pusher who's trying to sell you the reefer tells you, look, I'm smoking it and I'm not dead. Go ahead. As a punishment, Adam and Eve were cast out of the protection of the enclosed garden of delight outside where the beast of the field dwelled, Genesis 3:23. All kinds of evil people who were called kafir or jinn. But the Bible never comes out and say the devil was cast out of the garden. He was sentenced to go upon thy belly, Genesis 3:14. And if this particular snake was talking to Eve in the garden, and snakes as you know them haven't talked since, means that the God of the Bible and the Quran gave the serpent a larynx for the sole purpose of beguiling Eve. This goes back to my original point about the serpent having to have been some kind of being that looked, walked and talked like Eve, because as you know, serpents or snakes move on their bellies, which means that the serpent who was talking to Hawa or Eve was, again as I mentioned earlier, standing erect. So Islamic scholars and Mohammedans don't want to address, where did Shaitan come from? Why is he a plural? How could he be amongst the kafirin before there was a Quran or Muhammad to declare people kafirin? If he was from a group of beings called kafir before the Quran, then there must have been some type of religion or doctrine before the Quran worth believing in order to say if you don't believe in it, then you are a kafirin. Are you with that? Let me repeat, there must have been some kind of religious teachings that if you were in them, and didn't believe in them, you were called a kafir before the Quran was revealed in the year 610 AD. Muslims walk around with the assumption that they have a rounded understanding of everything until you say, well, where did Shaitan come from? Oh, he's from al-Kafirin, or he is from the disbelievers, Quran chapter 109, or Uwa min al-Jinn, meaning he is from the evil spirit, Quran chapter 72. In other words, how did Shaitan become a kafir? Again, according to what doctrine? What is it that he did not believe in that rendered him a kafir? Chapter 109 of the Quran of the Mohammedans called Surah A-Kafirin, and it tells you what a kafir is. It says, and I quote, I am not an abd, slave, of what you are serving, which is a grammatical mistake because it called Allah a ma or what instead of an al-ladhi or he who is. The Quran insults Allah by calling him a ma or what because a who is a person and a what is a thing. Now read the right translation and transliteration of Surah Al-Kafirin chapter 109, so you can see for yourself. Quran 109. Say, O you who conceal what you know to be right knowledge. Am not a slave to what you are a slave to. And you are not a slave for him, who I am a slave for, Al-Aliyun Ali, and I am not a slave of, what you are a slave for, spook gods, shrines, Kaabas. And you are not slaving for him, who I am slaving for, Elion El. You will have your decision, and I will have mine. Right translation in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. So there you have read it from the Arabic of your Quran and the right translation of chapter 109, where it so plainly refers to Allah as a what and not a who. According to the Bible, God was an us, not an I, in heaven. We know heavens either translates in Aramaic, Hebrew, as Shah-Ma-Yim, or in Ashuric/Syriac, Arabic, as Samawati correctly. Both of these words come from the same root sama, meaning up there. So, up is determined from being the opposite of down. What they are implying is Elohim, gods, were in the heavens, when they were creating the earth. How can there be a heaven, before there was an earth? You needed an earth to determine that earth was down, and heaven was up. You couldn't have a heaven until you have an earth, because on earth you see heaven. Therefore, God must have been on the earth and have gone to heaven. The Quran supports this in Quran 6:3. Or he was already in the heavens and then created an earth and called this earth, and called that heaven. But if he was in or inside the heavens, I'm back to his size now. If he was inside the heavens as stated in Deuteronomy 4:39, Matthew 6:9, and Quran 6:3, then the heavens are bigger than God, right? So then the heavens is God because God is supposed to be Akbar, meaning the biggest or the oldest, true or false? In order for them, the Kafirin, Quran chapter 109, to be declared ones who don't believe in something, means there must have been a doctrine that existed before the Bible or the Torah, the New Testament and the Quran. The Imams don't want to go near the fact that Satan is one of a group of other disagreeable beings. The rabbis don't want to touch it, and the reverends don't want to touch it. They write it off as, it must have been a doctrine. Of course, we know what doctrine they are talking about, the Sumer tablets. A few of these tablets are called the Atrahasis, the Enuma Elish, the Gilgamesh epics, record of the Adamites, tablets of Adapa, the tablets of Nergal and Erishkigal, the tablets of the descent of Ishtar to the underworld, the Akkadian tablets, the tablet of Etana. These tablets were recorded in the Akkadian and cuneiform, the language of the Elohim, script. They already had cultures set up, they're your descendants. We know who they are. When I say you, I'm not talking about Negroes who already have an inferiority complex because of television, I'm talking about Earth people. People who are on the planet Earth regardless of how they have progressed, or how they have regressed. They must start to address these pre-points. Because, if you start dealing with the pre-points, it will give you a better understanding of how much, or how less of an amount of information has been given to you from the Bible and Quran to now. Are human beings part reptilian? Don't act like humans are not reptilians or serpents. You yourselves call each other snakes. Because when you get mad you say I'll cut your throat you snake, or when someone betrays you, you call them a snake in the grass. Take a look at your hands, spread them apart and look at the webs. You see the pieces of flesh that connect your fingers together, they are your webs. Some are more pronounced than others, but they're there. When you were conceived you started off as a tadpole swimming to your mother as a sperm with a long tail. And while in your mother's womb, you still looked like a tadpole and you were in water and you had gills. How did you think you were able to breathe in that amniotic fluid? You also have scales. When you don't put on lotion, you can easily see the flakes on your skin. People call it ash. So don't tell me you are not part reptilian or numus. The Quran 72-6 also says that men are jinn, which are a race of spiritual beings that were created of smokeless fire or the lesser light. They use the word Ra'al and meaning mortal man. The next quote tells you how some Inosite men created by the Elohim sought refuge or mixed with the original reptilian from Sirius. The numus mixed in with evolutionary beings, thus you have the Dogon tribe. Quran 72-5-6, and surely, we, the Elohim Anunnakis thought that the Enosites and the malevolent beings, cherubims, the jinns, did not utter blasphemous lies about the source, Allah. And surely, they were mortal men from amongst Enosites, whom sought refuge with mortal men who are from amongst the malevolent beings, cherubims, the jinns. So they increased in their oppression. Right translation in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. They use the words Ra'al and a jinn together as though there is no distinction between the two. So men are from this same race of jinn, or the race of jinn are men. However you want to look at it, the devil does exist. If you asked a Mohammedan what is a jinn, they would say an evil force. Force, not the word evil, that's simple. Now, let's work with the word force, or evil being, or what else would they say? A spirit. Let's define that, because the Quran defines a spirit, nafs, as a person. The Aramaic, Hebrew, uses the same word nafsh and it also means, your personality. If I say nafsi it means myself. It will also mean my spirit. The word nafs is derived from the root word nafasa meaning to breathe, inhale and exhale, to take a breath, pause for breath, take a rest. So, the spirit or nafs, is the life force that exists in all living things, even plants. When you take the soul rule plus adjust a physical body you get an insana person. Nothing spooky about that, is there? This is why the word for myself in the Arabic language is nafsi. The nafs is merely the spirit. There is no spookism to it like some people, who want to look heavy in religion, seem to like to think. It is physical. Because as long as you use definitions outside of your physical realm you will never allow yourself to be responsible for your own actions and the state the world is in today. So to say that the words spirit and soul are things that are esoteric or spiritual is to take the physical, because the spirit is nothing but the self and the soul is nothing but the essence of you, and place it in the spiritual so that you can keep looking up in the skies for a being that you call God to be responsible for anything good that happens to you while you are alive. And bad things you blame on a devil. Both, you can't explain when asked. So stop teaching what you can't prove. We at Holy Tabernacle Ministries don't want your mythology. Give us facts. In order for Satan to have a self, there must be others, other than himself. If Satan existed before Adam and Eve, as I showed you earlier, he existed among a group of beings, and he was himself. But he was from the jinns, or he was from the shaitans or shay'e-shanihim, as the Quran so politely uses the plural in Quran 2:14, 2-102 shay'e-shanihim, or he was from the kafir, Quran 2:34, and because the Quran gets its understanding from the Torah, because it uses the Torah characters, Genesis 17:18, Joshua 24:4, Matthew 17:4, and Quran 2-136, it uses the Torah. 1. The idea of creation, Genesis 1:31, Genesis 1:3, Genesis 2:4, Quran 2-117, 7:54, and 23:12. 2. The idea of hell and heaven, Genesis 8:2, Quran 15:45-48, Deuteronomy 32:22, Quran 2-9-11, 3, System of Prayer, Genesis 17:3, Quran 96:19, 4, Fasting, Judges 20:26, Quran 2-184, 5, Dietary laws in relation to eating pig or not eating pig, Leviticus 11:7, Quran 5-4. Then you can safely say that the Quran is a byproduct, or a child of the Torah. The Quran came long after the Torah. The Torah had already given birth to a child called the New Testament. So then, the Torah is the Quran's grandfather, because the New Testament focused on Jesus, Matthew 1:1, and the Quran focused on Jesus, Quran 19:34. He is the character most mentioned within its covers. As a matter of fact, Jesus' name alone is mentioned 25 times in the Quran. These things are necessary to open up the minds of people that are closed. These are 360 questions with a heavier blow. The punches are a little harder, because they have to walk away, even if they don't want to. Even if they are staunch Muslims, I don't care. They can la ilaha illallah Allah, and Muhammad Rajul Allah all they want. You say if you put this story in this form and present it to them, and ask them, that's all I want to know. I'm not interested in Ramadan, a 30-day fast, right now. I'm not interested in Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca. I'm not interested in none of that stuff, right now. If we can get into fasting, and whether you eat pork, or whether or not you wear a jalabiyah, robe, or a tajiyah, cap, we will get into that, later. Right now, I'm not going to talk about Allah, because everybody is always asking the same question: where did God come from? Where did Allah originate? I got a new question that nobody asked. We want to know, where did Satan come from? And don't say, from the Kafir'ona, that's not enough. I want to know where these Kafir'ona come from. Who were they? And what did they not believe in that rendered them Kafir'ona? And what were they doing in the water? What was Allah doing moving around upon the face of the water? Let alone, walking in and out of the garden, in cools of days, Genesis 3:8? Once we get answers to this type of questioning, we can start to shake the doctrine of those reptilians, who have telepathically put our people under a spell called religion, a Greek word therskia meaning fearing, cry aloud. And once we give this man, or this being, or this snake, or whatever you want to call it, back his religion, fear of hell or fire, I guess they will say, we are brainwashed. And I say, wonderful, and I've been saying this for 25 years, you need your brains washed. You need a new kind of detergent to wash your brains of these stupid things that they got you sitting around idle in synagogues and churches and masjids, chanting for something that doesn't happen. Praying for things that aren't coming to pass, and lying to yourself, and telling yourself that you don't understand the spirit of Christmas. You can listen to Christmas carols, and you get the same spirit like everybody else. The Quran chanted sounds good, and so does Silent Night. That's the truth. When you were Muslims on this side of the ignorant pole, you were saying that Silent Night, man, they got to go, that stuff isn't right. It isn't. Jesus was born in a manger. You're so busy talking about the story that you were lying to yourselves. You walk by, and see a Christmas tree in your mind, but when you're with your friends, you say, there is no tree, it was cut down. What does the tree have to do with Jesus? Our whole book on Christmas is true. Yes, Christmas was fabricated. So what about Ramadan? Then, let's talk about Hajj. Let's all put on 2 sheets. No. Let's put on 2 towels. Don't you remember when you had it on in Mecca, saying, this is only a towel, I could have bought these with me, I could have got these at the hotel, before I got here. Let's run around a cube building, kiss a rock, cut a piece of my hair out, throw a bunch of pebbles at another rock, and go home and say, I'm a Hajj, I made a pilgrimage. What was the point? What did you do? You reenacted Hagar's depression, Genesis 16:6-8, and what did it symbolize? It symbolized Abraham not being fair to his wives, Genesis 16:6. This is something that the Quran tells you don't do. If you are not going to be fair with them, then have only one, Quran 4-3. The moment Hagar had a son, and Sarah became jealous, Abraham took sides, Genesis 16:5-8, the great Abraham, the father of many nations, Genesis 12:2. Quran 4-3, and if you fear that you cannot be fair to the orphan women, then marry what is good for you, of the Innocite women, in 2s, and 3s, and 4s, but if you fear that you won't deal justly, then have only one wife, or if you can't afford a dowry, then take that which your right hand possess, women taken in battle or slaves. This will be more suitable, that you won't turn from being just. Right translation in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Genesis 16:5-6, and then Sarai said to Abram, my injustice is your fault, I gave my slave girl unto your bosom, And she saw with her physical eyes that she had became pregnant. I became despised in her eyes. Who would judge between you and me? But Abram said, Sarai, here your female slave in your hand, do to her that which is agreeable. And Sarai put her down, and she, Hagar, ran away from her face. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Then, when Sarah had a baby by some extraterrestrial going into her tent, Genesis 18:9, and artificially inseminating her, and opening her closed womb that the Pharaoh Abimelech's wives had closed, so she could not give birth to a child and take over Egypt, Genesis 18:9. We are talking science. Who were the Egyptians? Noah's son, Ham's son, Mizraim, who became the alchemists, the scientists, the physicians, the magicians. Moses and Jesus both spent the first part of their lives in Egypt, Miri, thus they received Egyptian teachings and learned Egyptian sciences. So the so-called miracles that Moses performed, like making water come from a rock, Exodus 17:6, or when Jesus changed water into wine, John 2:8, is simply the science of alchemy, the transformation or changing of molecules. When Sarah was taken into the courts of the Pharaoh Abimelech, being kidnapped from Abraham, Genesis 22, for that period of time, and the Pharaoh's wives are saying, no, she isn't going to have a baby here, so that the Israelites, or Hebrews, will become the leaders of this land, they took her and gave her a tubulization, or had her tubes tied. Sarah and Abraham didn't have any knowledge of tubes getting tied. They were too busy running around the wilderness worshipping rocks, and altars, and cutting up animals, and burning blood. They were Israelites who weren't into that science that the Egyptians had in ancient Egypt. Then these same beings that artificially inseminated her came to Abraham and Sarah again. They call them angels in the Bible, Genesis 32:1, they call them Adonai, Genesis 18:3, they call them Yahweh, Genesis 18:1, they literally say Yahweh when Abraham saw Yahweh and two other Adonais, two masters, coming with him, Genesis 18:1-3. Abraham ran out because he recognized them and fell at his feet and prayed to them. I thought it said, don't have other gods before me, Exodus 23. Genesis 18:2, and he raised up his eyes and saw with his eyes, and behold, 3 Enochites, human beings, stood over by him, Abraham, and when he saw with his eyes, he ran out to meet them from the tabernacle door, and prostrated himself to the earth. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Isn't that what it said? What was Abraham, the father of many nations, doing on his face prostrating before the 3 men, Genesis 18:2? They were representatives of the Lord. Well, in Revelation 1:9, 22-9, a representative of the Lord was there, and John fell at his feet. And what did he say? He said, get up, I'm your fellow brother in tribulations, Revelation 1:17. What did Jesus say about the serving of 2 masters? Don't serve 2 masters, Matthew 6:24. There were 3 masters there in front of Abraham, and he was serving them. And so was Lot, Genesis 19:1. So now when Sarah had a baby with the help of these scientists, all of a sudden, what happened? Abraham sends Hagar and her son in the wilderness of the desert to die. You can have 2s, 3s and 4s, but you must be impartial and fair, according to the scriptures that these Muslims believe in, Quran 4-3. If you're going to have more than one wife, you have to be fair. If not, it says literally only have one. Did Abraham abide by that law? What did he do? Sent Hagar out, sent her and her son to the wilderness to die, Genesis 16:7-1, and guess what you do? Let's go celebrate that. Let's call it pilgrimage. You are going to celebrate Abraham violating the law. You are going to celebrate Abraham worshipping 3 men, Genesis 18:2. Or Mr. Muslim, was one of those men Allah? And if one of those men were Allah, who were the other 2? If I'm talking to a Yahweh ben Yahwehite, I want to know in Genesis chapter 19 who was that person who came to Lot as well as to Abraham? Who were they? Tell me that was Yahweh, because it says it was the Torah in Genesis 18:21 in there. Then you're telling me that was Jehovah God, that was Yahweh himself? The Almighty God? That was Shadi? Shadi came down himself? Then what was the problem you had with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he said it? Or was it because it was him saying it? But he said the same thing, the Almighty God came down to me in the person. If you read Genesis, you would see that the Almighty God came to Isaac, Genesis 35:9. He said, and God appeared to me, Isaac, and Jacob, Genesis 28:15, and God appeared to me. So no problem, if God appeared to Honorable Elijah Muhammad, fine. He had his God, Master Far Muhammad, who bred the 5% God, Clarence 13x. They aren't my God. He didn't appear to me for me, he appeared to him for him, in their story. If the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad believe that and he is their God and they get salvation in that, hey, I wish you the best, but I don't see you in a better condition. I don't see the reptilians being suppressed, in whatever form they have manifested into today. In the early 1930s, the extraterrestrials found that the Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Black Muslims, Ahmadiyya Muslims, Sunni Muslims, the Pentecostal Church, the Holy Name Church, all these radical groups, whether they were Muslims, Christians, or Jews, were all telepathically influenced. These organizations were all influenced by the reptilians. They manifest periodically to the Christians with the long blonde hair and the beard, and give the Jesus interpretation. The good Elohim or Anunnaki are responsible for the artificial insemination of Mary 2,000 years ago with Tammuz, and even Mary's birth as Ishtar to her mother Anna, Quran 3:35-36, for the birth of Jesus, which looked like a miracle back then. Today, it is just a matter of a test tube baby. They are responsible for the whole religious concept that has been placed in the world. Have the reptilians manifested as the Caucasus? Whether they had manifested into the Ashtar Command are the beings with blonde hair and blue eyes whose leader name is Ashtar Sharon. The Ashtar Command is from the Aldebaran star constellation and stand 5 to 6 feet tall. These beings are pale-skinned and are humanoids. You were talking about everybody you saw. There is a group of devils coming from another galaxy, called Procyon. The Procyonians are 7 to 9 feet tall and are dark brown to albino color. They are very muscular and voluptuous humanoids. They had been here building flying saucers and forming a mystical group responsible for religion. This is the condition that you are in. Adolf Hitler, 1889 to 1945 AD, the dictator of Germany, obviously didn't think of himself as special because he didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. He was helping another race of people who came from the Aldebaran star constellation who wanted to come here and take over. That's who Hitler was helping. He thought that they were the gods, and that they had chosen him as a Christ figure, and he knew that the father of the plagiarized religion was the Torah. The authors of the Torah plagiarized the Bible. They had helped Nebuchadnezzar to try to stop these writers misusing their holy tablets, which was copied and became the Bible. They wanted it stopped. The Babylonians were followers of the Anunnaki doctrine and couldn't take what these plagiarists were doing. They were plagiarizing from the Sumerian doctrine, so these Assyrian or Babylonian kings decided to kill the Israelites. The Babylonians boiled them in oil and other kinds of methods. The modem Israelites' justification for their God Yahweh destroying the Israelites during that time was because they turned away from him, Deuteronomy 7:4. When you hear the name Bukhara, immediately you think of the well-known Hadith writer Al-Bukhari, author of the many Hadith books entitled Sahih Bukhari. Well, that's Russia, where the Bukhari Hadith come from. It is the same city of Russia as the Ashkenazim Jews. Bukhara is the capital of the former Khana estate or jurisdiction of a Khan in central Russia. Bukhara, Russia Jews was a name applied to a community of Ashkenazim. The Mishnah, the Talmud and most of the Christian doctrine all come from this one place, France influenced. All the Talmuds and the schools are there. He knew that these religious people must be eliminated. Hitler read all of the books in Germany. This is how he knew so much about religious beliefs. Christians are nothing but Jews and Muslims are nothing but Christians. They just don't say it. Adolf Hitler knew when the Quran was written. The beings showed him a copy of the tape of a hologramic Gabriel, who they call Nusku, being holographically projected to a cave inside Saudi Arabia in the year 610 AD, and tells a man named Ahmad Akra or Ikra, read whatever they need, because there weren't any vowels, read this Muhammad, Ikra bismi rabbika al-lazi kalak. Muhammad came down from the mountain sweating and said, while I was up there fasting and meditating, a great light appeared to me in a cave. It was the angel Gabriel, Quran 96:1. They say Muhammad, or better yet, Muhammadans. Is this the same Gabriel that came to Mary? They don't address that. Is this the same Gabriel that appeared to Daniel in the wilderness as a man, Daniel 8:15, 16, 17? So why did he appear to you as a light when he appeared to Mary as a well-made man, as Quran 19:17 says? He appeared to Daniel as a man, Daniel 8:16, 9:21. Then they say that he embraced Muhammad. Spirits don't embrace people, spirits walk into people called walk-ins, spirits possess people, but they don't embrace people. So this hologramic image was a physical being, who came to Muhammad in a cave and gave Muhammad the Quran, which was nothing but scriptures from the Torah and the Injil. If Muslims say that the stories of the Bible are not true, is it wrong for them to disagree with Christianity and vice versa? No, this is something that happens all the time. A good example is when Muslims said the authors of the Bible staged the parting of the Red Sea, Exodus 14:21-22. I talked about that and turned the tables on both of them. I asked the question, how long does it take God to create? According to the Muslim world and the Jewish world and the Christian world, it took Eli, God, 6 days of 24 hours. Multiply that by 6 and you come up with 144 hours. He rested on one day called the seventh day. Muslims accept that, yes or no? Christians accept it, and so do Jews. Now if I said, you mean God, and I want you to answer like a Christian, Muslim or a Jew, you mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all of this in 6 days? You would say yes, and I say how is that possible? You would say because he is God or Allah. Now the Muslims go a little step further and they say no, he just said kun fayakun, exist, and into existence it came. He didn't need a whole 6 days, he just said kun. In doing that they think they said something heavy. They still make him look like a wimp, because yes, God can do it in 6 days. But does God need 6 days? If he can do it in 6 days, he can do it in 1 day, and if he can do it in 1 day, he can do it in 1 hour, if he can do it in 1 hour, he can do it in a minute, if he can do it in a minute, then he doesn't even have to say kun fayakun if he's God. By declaring that he had to have a designated word or a designated time or a designated motion says that God is designated. An all-powerful intellect of all the universe does not have to say to himself, because obviously nobody else was there, kun fayakun. He does not need 6 days and then rest 1. So it's not important whether it took him 6 million years or 6 days or 6 seconds, because whenever you assign a time to the creation you are belittling the God you believe in. God merely said kun fayakun, be, and it is. He did that with 4 whole syllables. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. That's not one statement. Kun fayakun, that means that he was thinking in the Arabic language. That's an Arabic statement, and it was said how long ago? 6 to 10,000 years ago. There was no Arabic 6 to 10,000 years ago on this planet Earth. There was no such language 6 to 10,000 years ago. It was called Ashuric. You have to go to Genesis chapter 10 verse 17 to find someone named Ashur. So if the word Ashuric, which breeds the word Syriac, which gave birth to the language Arabic, and the word Aramic, which gave birth to the word Hebrew, came in the 10th chapter of Genesis, then from Genesis 1 to 9 what language were they speaking? Because Aram son of Shem, Genesis 10:22, wasn't born yet, Ashur son of Shem, there wasn't any Arabic then and there wasn't any Hebrew then. There's nothing wrong with Allah. Let me make that clear for you. Ashur is older than Aram, so what they're calling Arabic is older than what they're calling Hebrew. We know they are both dialects of the same language. When you write Allah in Hebrew you're writing Aleph, lamed Heth. If you wrote that in Arabic you would be writing ALH, which is the short form of Allah. If you stretch the word Elo out into the plural by merely using the Hebrew for pluralization Yod Mim, you create Elohim. The word Elo translates as the word these. Any Bible, Genesis 2:4, that says these are the generations of the heavens and the earth has for the very first word, if you look, you'll see Elo underlined. That is the word these and is the same word as the Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, Ila, and the Aramic, Hebrew, Elo. Genesis 2:4, originally right translation originally 2:1. These Elohim Anunnaki are the genealogy of the skies Rizk of Ilion, a planet of another galaxy, and the planet Earth, Chi, when they were reconstructing and procreating, in the day that the Elohim Anunnaki made the planet Earth, and its skies appear. Right translation in Aramic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Now you found out that the word these is the word Allah, as we already said. When they add the Hebrew letters Yod and Mim, which is the plural, it becomes these beings. Then the Greeks got it and added O's to it, just like you would add T or ED words. They add the O's on the word these and it became Theos, the Greek word for God or gods. Because you know these and the are the same thing in plural, Theos. Arabs say Allah, Alif, Lam, Lam, Ha is, Al, the, La, for, who, him. Some say the source, some say the absolute, and that's how they will interpret the name El in Aramic, Hebrew, Alif lamed as the absolute, when there is another attribute of Allah and it's called Alif Lam Lin Lam Ya Ile, the 36th attribute, which breaks down the Lin Lam Ya. In Hebrew it's the same thing, Lin. We put Ha instead of A. That's the one which you can see. The Ha in Hebrew today is nothing but a Lam and an Alif, turned upside down. So this here is Ali, which is up on or upon, which is up on or high or highest. They call it in Arabic Al-Aliyu, why they made Ali son of Abu Talib the most prominent figure in the Islamic religion. But there is a chapter in the Quran which is one of the most authentic ones called Suratu al-Ali, chapter of the highest, chapter 87. Because it tells them to go back to the old tablets called the Suhuf. They will find the cuneiform writings there. They also write that as Ayin, lamed, in Hebrew which I or L, or they will write it Alif lamed, which is spelled L. That's why Israel called their airline El Al today. They understood the Ayin for the highest and the L for the source. So when you say Allah you are taking one of these beings, from the Hebrew Alif lamed Heth, or from the Arabic Alif Lam Ha, spells Ilah. La ilah ila Allah, there is no Elo except Allah, and the name Anu means highest or heavenly one, the same as the 36th attribute Al-Aliyu. So Anu is Allah and they are one and the same, showing you that there is more than one of them. You wouldn't have to say that. Why do you have to say Wahdahu la sharika lahu, and no partners has he, if there is not more than one? How could you bind partners with Allah if he doesn't have anybody capable of being like him? It says, Quran chapter 112, Ki uwa Allah ahad, say he God the one and only, Allah I-Samad, God, the eternal, the absolute. So if Allah is Al-Samad the absolute, according to their meaning of Samad, he can't have a partner, because it says, Kufan ahad, and there is none like unto him. So how can I become a mushrik, idolater? How can I bind partners with Allah? In order for me to bind partners, there must be someone equal to Allah. So if I bind partners with anything less in power and glory and might, I won't be binding partners with Allah, I'll be worshipping a subsidiary like they do Muhammad. So when they make a statement Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu, you're making a statement that I stand witness to this one Allah, not the other ones. He is alone. What does he say in Exodus 23? I am the Lord thy God, ye shall have no other gods before him. What you were worshipping and adoring was the Allah of the La ilaha illa Allah, the one assigned to you sent by Anu. He was called Tammuz, one of the Elohims or Allahs. He is alone and has no partners. There are many gods on this planet, many Allahs in Quran, whether the Muslims want to recognize it or not. The Hindus have their equivalent to Allah, the Native Americans have their equivalent to Allah, the Eskimos have their equivalent to Allah, the Australian Aborigines have their equivalent to Allah, the Druids have their equivalent to Allah, the satanic worshippers have their equivalent to Allah. Whether the Muslims want to pretend that there is no other human being with the same brain capacity that they have, utilizing it to worship some being which would be equivalent to Allah or not, is up to them. They can play stupid to reality, but in reality, the ancient Egypt Horus was God like Allah, Amun-Ra was a god Allah, Amun and Ra were two gods who became one, just as Allah and Rahman were two gods which became one, who was a god like Allah. They were telling these beings of the Native Americans, of the Eskimos, of the Australian Aborigines, are not your Allah. You should have none but this one, and him alone shall you serve. He only listens to those who praise him. So to him is due all praise. All praise is due Allah, he is the master of the universe. He is the yielding and he is the most merciful, the ruler of the day of judgment. Is it your day of judgment or is it the Hindus' day of judgment? They don't believe in the day of judgment. The Christians have a different day of judgment than Muslims. The Eskimos have a different one than the Native Americans. So I'm talking about the ruler of the day of the end of your species. Your type of being. Your spiritual adoration or submission to some being. He is Lord of all the worlds as they put it, that's what it's talking about. Then it goes into what? He alone do we worship and he alone do we. Why do I have to keep stressing that he's alone if there are no partners for him, to him? Why do I have to keep saying he's alone? If Allah is alone, I do not have to keep saying that. You get the point? So there is nothing wrong with being Ansarullah. Do you hear the name? For 25 years of worshipping Allah, you kept reading so much crap that you were reading other Allahs. You are not into Allah as these beings when you were assigned to an Allah who would be responsible for you, in whose image and in whose likeness you were created. Do you understand that? But no, you want to read a star of books by Masons and listen to the Indians about shamans talking about their gods. Then people said that I had to write a book about why Allah should not be called God, edition number 29. What was I saying? I was trying to tell people that when you say God, you have to understand what culture you're in and what they mean by God to find out whether the title God applies to what you are calling God or not. If you're standing next to some person and he says I worship the Almighty God, Allah God, God Allah, fine. Then he says he's a satanic worshipper. What do you mean? Well, God is Satan to them. They call him Baphomet, the satanic goat of Mendes, who is the god of lust. Albert Pike, the Grand Commander, Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry, teaches that Satan is the god of Masonry. Yes, Lucifer is God. If you don't believe that God is Satan, then this would not apply to you. The Pope teaches that Lucifer is God. The word Lucifer comes from the Latin word lucifer, which means light bringer, light bearer. The Catholics practice these light bearers, which means that they worship Lucifer in their churches. So stop thinking that because people use God, Allah, etc., that it's the same one you are referring to. Anyone can grab the name God and use it. Satan can be called God and do devilishment in the name of God. Do you realize that they believe? If you walk through Egypt today, you would come across Egyptians named Paul. They were not converted to Christianity. They were born and raised in Egypt in a place called Mahdi, which is one of the main places, and for one they are Coptic Christians. When they write Jesus, they call Jesus Ibn Allah. They don't know about Walad, son by birth, Ibn, son by adoption. Another place they call Jesus Allah. Lebanon does the same thing. There are many Arabic-speaking Christians. The Jehovah's Witnesses refer to Jesus as Allah in their Arabic translation of the Awake magazines. So if I'm talking to someone who's fluent in Arabic, and he's a Jehovah Witness and we're discussing Allah, I may think as a Muslim that he's talking about the Allah of the Quran and that we are talking about the same Allah, and he's talking about the Allah of the New Testament, another Allah. So is there more than one Allah? Yes, because the Jehovah's Witnesses have made him more than one Allah. How can there be more than one Allah? The very fact that Swahili is a language that was formed from Bantu and Arabic, and all the people that speak Swahili are not Muslims but they have incorporated Allah into their dialect that applied into their tribal gods, or in the Yoruba religion of Nigeria that gave birth to the Voodoo religion, the temple where they have Obatala. The phonetics are there. So we had to single out which Allah we worship. We said Aka Nabudu wa Aka Nastan. It's you alone that we serve and it is you alone we beseech for help. Which means there must be others I could have served and others I could have asked for help. Quran chapter 1. The Quran chapter 7 to 192 to 194 says that call on your gods, Allah, and see if they will help. You will find no other helper but me, Allah says. Why would he have to say that? You gather your God. Muhammad told them, I'm going to go sit under a blanket with my people, the Alil Bayt. And you go get your people and you call on your God and I call on my God. Quran chapter 109. Do you realize when Muhammad made that statement he just became a blasphemer? He just violated the laws because he gave them a God equal to Allah by that statement. That's not found in the Quran, that's in the Hadiths. That's snuck in through innovation, that's snuck by those demons, while the Muslims are reading it. When he says hear and obey even if it was an Ethiopian person is your ruler. Do you hear the even, and if the argument is not about that, you get your point across. See, that means that some dark-skinned Ethiopian person would rule us. That's not what's important. The point is whoever wrote that said even if it was an Ethiopian person. What do you mean by that? You won't hear that, because you're hearing what you want to hear. H 445, Anas ibn Malik reported on the authority of the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, saying, hear and obey even if an Abyssinian is appointed as ruler whose head seems to be like a raisin. You hear and obey even if an Abyssinian, which are Ethiopians. I mean, once there might have been a Mujada. What about the even if and the person who wrote it could have not been a Nubian? See the game. Islam is saturated with these linguistic tricks that they never will hear. Let me say it again, La ilaha illa Allah Muhammad Raj Allah. You have just binded partners with Allah because you just put in one statement more than one Allah. In their kalima, they call it kalima tayyiba, the agreeable one or the right one. Look what happens. La ilaha is short form for Allah, La ilaha except ila Allah. Number 2, Muhammad. A man is a rusul, a word meaning sent from Allah. You got two Allahs in one short form in one sentence. Every time they open their mouths they have the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost. Every time they say the Tasmiyah, Bismi Allah, they got Allah, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, the Son and the Holy Ghost from the same source, Allah. Then Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, those are the Trinity right there. Now look at this, take the first chapter of the Quran and read the first line, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, which translates according to the Abdullah Yusuf Ali Quran, praise be to God, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. Now ask yourself if this Quran is coming down to the Prophet Muhammad by way of the angel Gabriel from Allah. Then who is talking, because it clearly says, praise be to God. If this is from Allah himself it should read praise be to me. If they say angel Gabriel is saying it, then it is the angel Gabriel's revelation, not Allah's. These people do not know who and what God is or even if he really exists. Because Islam comes from Judaism and Christianity. It was the Christians who created the God of Islam and Muslims will never admit to that. They got so far away from reality that they will never see it. They will call you a kafir. You mean the same word kafir meaning disbeliever that the Quran claims that Satan, which they call Shaitan the devil, came from in Quran 2:34 where it says, and behold we said to the angels bow down to Adam and they bowed down, not so Iblis he refused and was haughty, he was of those who reject faith. The word Iblis is another word for Satan and the word reject faith in the Arabic of that Quran is mina kafirin, from the disbelievers. So is this the same group of beings? For this is in the plural disbelievers that Satan belonged to, or is it in the Quran chapter 109 entitled Al-Kafirin and referring to mortals someone different? Is this a new sect of Kafirones? I ask then, which Kafir is Suratu El-Kafirin, the 109th chapter of the Quran talking about the Kafir from Iblis's time, or this one from Muhammad's time, which is only 1,400 years ago? They are all the same. Then what was the religion of Satan's time? They made him Kafir, get that in your head. Because it takes those things to open you up enough to sit yourself back, and say let me check out everything that I hear from now on. Really listen to what they are trying to put in your head, and why. Because it kept you sedated. It kept you in a blind state. Religion keeps you in a sedate state. We spent all day Friday from 1 o'clock to about 3 o'clock just making sounds. We call it praying. Still making sounds whether you were listening to Marvin Gaye or Sheikh Abdul Basit from Egypt or your imam reciting. You were gathering on Friday for music purposes. You are wasting life, valuable life. Then you say, why do we do it? Because it was necessary to get you together. I had to give you what you wanted, which was religion. You wanted a better religion than Christianity and a better religion than Judaism and a better religion than fundamental Moorish science, Nation of Islam and Sunnism. I gave it to you and I kept you above their questions for 20-something years. Now you want to know the facts about it. I'll give it to you. Can you handle it? Allah as a name is one of many Allahs called Elohim, and he is on a craft according to their knowledge. According to what you know, you will shake hands with him on a spiritual plane. He is one of those, these, Elohim, Allahumma. Then there is Anu, who is El Elo, not just Elo. He is Elion El, the Most High. When I say Allah is on a craft, I'm speaking about the fact that they place Allah in the 2nd chapter and the 255th verse of the Quran, on a kursi, which is a chair. They say he's up there. They say in the Quran that when he finished his duties on earth he took residence in the heavens and made it a firm structure. Quran 2:22. This Allah travels from place to place. Quran 2:29. This Allah is immortal at times, a spirit at other times, a mere inspiration at other times. For the answer to who or what all praise is due, you go back to that first word Kuluum in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, and in Aramaic, Hebrew, is the same, and for many years I taught you about it. Now it's time for you to get the facts. When you talk about Allah, God, or whoever you want to call the creator of the universe, you are talking about a being that is within your realm of explanations, definitions, space and time. Because you have given Allah body parts, arm, leg, arm, head, and made him a human or physical being, Genesis 22:13, Exodus 9:15, Exodus 33:11, you put him in a chair or kursi, and by doing that gave him a size, shape, and form, Quran 2:255. If you say he is in heaven, Ecclesiastes 5:2, Quran 6:3, that is still containing him in some place or something, making him something less than himself, because he is the all. When you say the creator is the all, you're saying that nothing can be added to the all, and nothing can be taken away from the all. Isaiah 45:5-7, I am the Lord, there is no other God. I will give you the strength you need. Although you do not know me, I do this so that everyone from one end of the world to the other may know that I am the Lord and that there is no other God. I create both light and darkness, I bring both blessing and disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. Right translation in Aramaic, Hebrew, by Dr. Malachi Z. York. Let me put it to you another way. When you look at a person you see just an individual. When you look at that person under a microscope, you can get closer and closer to that person until you can see right through them. And when you get to the cells, each cell seems to be working individually from the others, until you pull back from the cells, from the organisms, from the skin back to the person and see that those cells make up one organism. If you take it back further, you no longer see one person, you see a group of people. Pull back further, you see the planet Earth. Is the planet Earth a living organism? Yes, it is. It is a living and breathing entity. Everything on the earth is a part of the earth. And the earth itself is part of the universe. It is part of the all. As a part of the all, al-Kulum from the inside, you become the sons of God, and as sons of gods, you are indeed gods, as Jesus quoted from David's Psalm 82:6, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. The word Elohim, meaning more than one being, is being used in Genesis 1:1 as if it is a single God. Each man is an Elo. Elohim is a group of beings, Anunnaki, or Adamites, earthling, Enosites, human. Now look at this again, any Elohim can be an Elo. When beings appear as individuals, the last two letters of the word Elohim, which are Yod Mem that imply for pluralization, are dropped and we have the word Elo, the single, which is the same as the Arabic Elah, short for Allah. So each angel is an Allah or Elo. A group of angels are an Allahumma or Elohim, called the Anunnaki in the ancient tablets. When you say Allah, you are making him part of the all, therefore he could not be the all. To say the all is Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, God or Jesus, is blaspheming. So when you ask the question, who is God? The answer is you, because you are part of what makes up the all and a portion of the all is in you. That's what Jesus meant when he said, when you see me you see the Father, John 14:9, and I and my Father are one, John 10:30. He was trying to tell you that you are God, John 10:34-35, Psalm 82:6. God is anyone or thing in control of other beings or things. To be God does not make you the all. God is within thee, all for ye are gods, as Psalm 82:6 states and John 10:34 supports, but you are not the source of all things, for you are one of the things in the source. The God concept as mentioned above is man's ultra ego at work. So you could be called the egos, for God had to be in a home in the heavens, had to be in control over people's destiny, had to be a judge and prosecutor and sentencer and executor, had to have hands, had to have a heart, and had to have eyes. Eventually Michelangelo, the great artist of the 1500s in Italy, drew God as an old man in the image of his own race on the ceiling of the 16th chapel. The Christians personify God in their image to form the many statues that don the many crosses in Christianity, or to symbolically be present in a black stone in the corner of a cube-shaped building in Mecca on the part of the Muslims. The Quran is saturated with countless demonstrative pronouns of God being he or him. The arrow tip that takes the life is God over death. The sperm and ovum meeting in procreation in life is God in life. The nourishment in food. For the health is the God of health, and the bacteria in sickness is the God of sickness. Anything in control is a God. Once you begin to accept that you're God and that I'm God, and she's God, and he's God, then, as I said before, you can be responsible for your own actions and everything that happens to you, and then and only then can you change the state the world is in as children of the Most High. Therefore God and the devil do exist. It just depends on who or what is God and the devil according to your definition. If you call the devil something evil, that's fine, but isn't disease something evil? So what does that make your God?